Thailand's army chief is holding talks with key players in the political crisis after declaring martial law in the protest-hit nation. The army says the imposition of martial law is intended to preserve order and bring stability to the country. The military insists it's not a coup, but an intervention during a time of crisis. This comes after the country's constitutional court ousted its Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra from office last month. She's been accused of corruption, mismanagement of funds and abuse of power. Her supporters have called her removal a judicial coup. Her political detractors, on the other hand, want to replace her government with an interim, unelected group of individuals known as a People's Council. CCTV's Tony Cheng has more on how the crisis escalated.
It was an announcement that was predictable, inevitable, and whether you believed it or not, plunged Thailand even deeper into political crisis.
I have run the country sincerely and without the corruption that is stated in the accusation against me.
After hanging on for 6 months, Yingluck Shinawatra was forced from office and politics earlier this month by the combined judgments of the Constitutional Court and the Anti-Corruption Commission. The election she had called to restore her government's mandate had also been discounted. Protesters on the streets disrupted the polls and the Election Commission stalled on the count. Although it was widely believed the government had won, the Constitutional Court again intervened and the result was annulled. Ms. Yingluck's hastily appointed successor is a relative unknown. A former executive in her brother's corporate empire, he appears more lieutenant than leader. And while he said he was prepared to compromise on many things, everything, he said, must start with a vote.
We cannot stop the election. That's against the law. What we can do that in parallel. We have the election first and then do the reform. That's how we see it.
That should be relatively simple. The Election Commission itself has proposed a date, July the 20th. But they've also said they don't think the caretaker Prime Minister has the legal authority to call an election. A strange conclusion that may follow the letter of the law, but ignores the spirit in which it was written.
Are you now confident you'll be able to hold an election within a month of July the 20th?
I'm not sure because in a time frame, I think that it's not enough.
When, in your opinion, do you think you should be holding this election?
We cannot answer this question because it will be discussion between us and the government tomorrow.
That meeting descended into chaos before it began. The venue, a secure military base, was invaded by protesters as soldiers stood by and watched. Protest leader Suthep Thaugsuban was escorted inside by Air Force officers as the caretaker Prime Minister fled through a back door. And that has left many people to fear for the democratic process in Thailand.
That would be the end of democracy in Thailand. Voting rights is not only for Thailand, it's the basic fundamental human rights accepted by international standard for any state who's claiming that they are a democratic state.
That may not worry the protesters, who've always maintained their goal is an unelected government. They already have control of Government House. Their leaders come and go as they please. But it's not over yet. It's 7 months since these protests started in earnest, and the protesters have made considerable gains. They've got rid of one Prime Minister and forced the government out in exile on the outskirts of Bangkok, while they now control Government House. They appear to have high-placed friends in the army, the Senate, the Election Commission and the courts. But no one at this stage is prepared to take the final move and get rid of what they call the Thaksin regime. And that will only happen when they can use votes rather than influence or force to take control. Tony Cheng, CCTV, Bangkok.